And I think that was one of the things that Gregor was talking about this morning, the fact that we want authentic learning experiences for our students. And certainly we try and do that as much as we can within the units that we teach. EDST 201, 261, 204 and 264 are very much pedagogy-based courses. There is some science content in them, particularly looking at the physical sciences, but the pedagogy is something that we really develop with our students. SCIT 140 is a new unit which began this year and focused very much on just the science, so on the three major disciplines and again the everyday applications of those. And EDST 422 was I actually ran that during summer school, and I think it's probably had probably had its last run through as a face-to-face. Hopefully it will go online next year, and that again is both content and also pedagogy. The postgraduate science units are at this stage just run at Strathfield. And EDST 512 is the Masters of Teaching unit for our K to 6 teachers, and the remaining groups down there, the 543, 544, I just keep going on, they are our Masters of Teaching for our high school teachers, and they focus on specific science disciplines. So I think you can see that there's certainly quite a range of science units which we run through ACU at Strathfield and also at North Sydney. Do you want to talk about the first part?
I will. Thank you, Trish. Okay. So I'll just say something about the 140 course. We've got a very large enrolment. Well, we think it's large, 380 students, and every week each of those students has an hour lecture and a 2-hour tutorial. And the 2-hour tutorial is actually hands-on practical work. So I'd like to acknowledge publicly the tutors, the sessionals that are involved in this, and also our two wonderful lab technicians. Without their work, it simply wouldn't happen. But how did we go about conceptualising this unit? It had to be science content, and we thought about what are the big ideas in each of the 4 sciences. What are the big ideas? So in biology, it was obviously cell theory and evolution. In geology, as an example, it would have been plate tectonics. In chemistry, it was the particular nature of matter, as an example. And in physics, it was light, sound, and we've also put in astronomy. So we've yet to see the impact of this unit in our student evaluation. But we were always very conscious that these students have not done any science since year 10 at high school, and they often have very low self-efficacy. And we wanted to change that view, negative view about science, and turn it into a really positive experience. And we are positive about our subject, we're positive about its teaching. And it's just not just words, we want to show our view about the nature of science in the way we've structured the lectures, the tutorials, and the hands-on practical work and the assessment tasks. Trish, 108.
We're sort of tag teaming here depending upon who was the LIC. So Will was the LIC obviously for 140, and I've been the LIC for 108 for the last 2 years. 108 developed as one of the first national units in 2015, and it had a very different core group because it was focusing on our early childhood teachers. And just as Will made the comment that many of our students have not studied science in year 11 or year 12, and they approach their studies in science education they're very scared. I think that's probably the best word that we could use to describe it. They're scared. And often they say, I don't like science. I don't want to do science. I didn't understand it. I didn't take it in high school. Why do I have to do it now? And when you say to both the early childhood teachers and also to the teachers who will go on to, or the pre-service teachers who will go on to do primary teaching, that it's a fundamental topic, a fundamental aspect that they need to employ in all of their educational approaches. And so science, just like literacy and numeracy, is a fundamental skill. And I think one of the things that we certainly try and employ is the fact that they don't need fancy technical equipment, they don't need a lot of science-based content knowledge. What they do need is an enthusiasm and a passion for science. And that's certainly one of the things that we try and instill in EDST 108. And as you can see, its emphasis is on science inquiry, and also one of our major directives from ACARA looking at sustainability. The numbers are not as large as you can see for SCIT 140, but they're still, given across both of the campuses, quite a handful to deal with. And when you are dealing with a large number of tutors, as Will said, I think it's important that we try and make sure that the message is quite consistent that goes across through all of our tutorials. And I think I've got the next one as well. And what we like to do in the next few minutes where we're talking about within our presentation is that there are two main aspects. One of them is actually looking at the hands-on practical work itself, and I think I've sort of mentioned that to you in that we try and use everyday materials to teach the principles and the concepts of science. We take advantage of the technology, obviously, as Gregor was talking to us about this morning, but we also try and empower our students to be able to see science in the everyday and to be able to practice those activities during their tutorial time. And as Will said, a number of our students will often email us back during their professional placement and say, what was the resource that you used for that particular activity? I'm doing science in prac, or my teacher wants me to demonstrate a science lesson. I really need to, make sure that I know the background to that. What were the chemicals that you used, for example? When I say chemicals, it's things like baking soda and vinegar, but it's still the things that they keep coming back to us. So our tutorials are very much geared towards that hands-on activity. And the second thing that Will is going to talk to you about are the actual use of the tutorial activities in assessment.
Thank you. So I'm going to outline now some of the things that we do on campus and off campus. So this list here is typical of what we would be doing, not every week, but spread throughout our units. So a lot of modelling and simulations on the computer, or modelling and simulations with actual physical things. We do a lot of first-hand investigations, particularly the FAIR test, and Trish will talk about that. And we take our students outside. And this photograph on this slide shows you this is some students. They happen to be secondary. We make use of the gardens and the bush and the rubbish areas that are around the campus to illustrate some field work. We do a lot of online interactives, role play. I've asked students to make some animations, some slow motions and iMovies, and I've got an example for that today if we get time. Certainly a lot of demonstrations about science concepts. Students are asked to do presentations about syllabus content, and we still have face-to-face lectures, and in particular this first year unit that I ran, Science 140, most lectures actually had some physical demonstration, and I got students, pick them out of the audience to actually come and either at the beginning assist me with the presentations, but at the end I say, this is the presentation, will you kindly do the presentation? So it's about getting our students engaged in the work. 5 minutes, oh my goodness, all right. So opportunities off campus. So we like to take them to the Sydney Observatory in the evenings. We've got them to be involved in community activities like Clean Up Australia, and from that one we've got some publications in progress. Trish, FAIR test, we've only got 5 minutes.
I'll try and do it in one.
That's all right.
Run your eye down the list of topics that we ask our students to investigate. Now, we give the topics now to our students, and each student has a different topic. I think we have something like 30 topics that we rotate through the 300 or so odd students that might be studying that unit. And basically the idea is to pick things, or to get students to investigate things that they're likely to at some time or other face in their regular life. So things like, how can cut flowers be made to last longer in a vase? The number of students that come up with some unique ways, for example, with that first topic, from things like ordinary water to adding salt to adding sugar. I've even had beer and a few interesting added chemicals. But again, the idea is to create an authentic learning environment for students. It also is fundamentally important with the FAIR test, and I know a number of you might be science-based people who already are very much familiar with how scientists work, is to teach the students the systematic approach. Remember when Gregor this morning was talking about the difference between the sort of, well, I'm going to change this and change that and change something else and see what happens. This is a classic case of changing one thing and then having a look at what happens. But the FAIR test investigations, as you can imagine, with 380 of them to mark, it can be quite time consuming, but I think it's always interesting, and having marked several hundred of them, to have a look at how students actually put their ideas on the page. And certainly, again, it's a foundational thing that they can present to their, probably ideally, their K-6 class.
Now, for anybody who'd like a copy of our presentation, most welcome, because I'm going to slip the next slide because of time. I'd like to talk now about some of the assessment tasks that we're involved in, and these are the ones that have led to publication. So, all within the context of working scientifically. So in our first science unit, Science 140, one of the assessment tasks is that students need to engage with the environment. So we've got 380 students on both campuses involved in the Clean Up Australia Day, which is the first Sunday of March, or they participate a whole Sunday at Waratah Park, Duffy Forest, or conservation volunteers at Sydney Park. And there are 2 publications in progress, and I'll talk to you about those. And there's the other unit that I'm involved with is in the secondary part, and the students and I have written a publication on oceanography, lesson planning ideas, and for those people that are interested, I have a copy of that publication as a handout for you today. So the working in the environment is an integral part of working scientifically. So the students sign up to do Clean Up Australia. It's all done online. They do it in their own time. It is the first Sunday of their semester, so they're right into it straight away. They need to tell us about, in their presentation at the end of the semester, what is sustainability, what have they learnt, etc., etc. And what I've got permission from the university to do is actually to collect their assignment work, and it is obviously a volunteer, non-identified. We've done all the ethics clearance and all that kind of stuff. So we have permission to gather all our data. So what's happened in terms of that is I've put together a paper for the Australian Journal of Environmental Education, and it's early pre-service teachers' experiences of the environment, a case study of participation in a community outdoor event. So the paper is about the work that these students have done. It is actually showcasing their developing understanding about environmental issues and science issues from the beginning of their undergraduate studies to become a primary school teacher, and it is obviously with a focus of science. So this is going in an academic journal, and that's already being sent off, and there is another publication coming in a teaching journal, a professional journal. This is the official journal of the Australian Science Teachers Association, and I've got reviewers' comments that I need to do. And I've been given another 2 minutes. 2 minutes, thank you. And so the second publication is out. This is a publication that I did with some students. The students actually did a most outstanding assignment, got a high distinction. I couldn't fault it. And what they did was, I said to them, this is worthy of publication. Can you redo, here are my suggestions. We had a kind of a threesome meeting. They did all the work. They handed it back to me. I polished it, put it in academic English, the story. And so I sent it away for publication. And this paper is the result of their work. It is published in the New South Wales Science Teachers Association Journal. And I'm really pleased to see that both Sam and Kim have got a full-time teaching job. And I just think encouraging students to do publications, if it's good quality work, is very good for their CV. So this, as I said, the paper is coming around. And what it was involving was using some IT work that they had developed and what they had found on the internet themselves. So it was an activity, an oceanography activity that could be used for students that were living at the coastal area, and also for students that were living, can I say, the back of Burke. So it wouldn't matter. So what we're interested in exploring is how might this work in science teacher education apply to your particular discipline context to advance your own scholarship of learning and teaching. So at the moment we're looking at possibilities and challenges for our own learning and teaching about how to teach science to intending teachers. So I'd like to open the rest of the talk for maybe questions and discussion amongst yourselves.
So, thank you very much, Wilhelmina and Trish. So, first of all, we'll open up the floor to questions. Yes.
Can I put a question up which is not on board?
You can do whatever you like.
Yeah.
Thanks very much. My one, and this just came about from listening to the great work that you're both doing in science education at the moment. And a selfish question, so I want to know the answer for my own teaching. How do you go about assessing these practical skills with such large cohorts? Because, I mean, I teach science myself, mainly to secondary teachers, students in geography. And, I mean, my class sizes are maybe at most half of what you have, and yet it's still a challenge trying to correctly design assessments which really get at those practical skills, which is so important in these students. So I guess I'm looking for tips.
Do you want to go first?
I like the way we both breathed at the same time. I think one of the things that we do is that we have quite specific, we use criterion reference. So the actual criteria that we use are quite specific for our students. And we develop those criteria as a result of discussion. So you can imagine how challenging it can be when you've got, I think we put up on the slide 5 tutors. At one time it was 9. Wilhelmina was managing 9 tutors. So first of all is that we have quite specific discussions with the tutors about the level of performance and the standards that we're looking at from our students. I think secondly, we're not above discussing with each other or having someone come in and having a look at what's going on in each other's tutorials. And as an LIC, I deliberately swap with my tutors so that we swap for 2 weeks and I look at someone else's and they look at mine. In terms of the actual, I guess, the sort of physicality of being in the room and watching them,
Yes.
one of the advantages that we have is that we've got very good technical support. So the technicians that we have set things up so that it's quite objective and that we can have a look at how students are carrying out certain activities. I think too, we always adopt it's like we teach it, they practice it, they develop their skills in it before they are assessed in it. So I think it's a continuum there. We don't usually ask the students, even in terms of the fair test. The fair testing is we spend at least 1 tutorial just doing the fair tests. We tell the students exactly what they're looking for. We constantly review the data analysis processes, so how they actually capture the data, how they represent the data in tables and so on, and we teach our pre-service teachers how to set up tables, which is not a natural skill. And no offence, Monica, but they cannot transfer it from maths to science any more than they could transfer science to maths, I'm sure. And I think we actually make sure that they are ready as possible to do the assessment. Now, what have I left out, Will?
Nothing. Absolutely nothing. So the skills is, many students come with this idea that science is hard. We need to get them out of that mindset, right? They have a lot of trouble even drawing a graph, drawing a table. It's not everybody, but it's a significant number. And so we have to teach them the skills. It sounds like we just do recipe science. No. They have to be able to mix before they can make a cake or even decide what kind of flavour. Do you know what I'm saying? So that I'm sorry to say, but some of the basic science skills they simply don't have. So sometimes we are actually starting from year 7 at high school. Okay? All right. I'm very happy to take another question. Monica.
Well, just as Trish was talking about the maths, because with the new programs it says how would you teach something in, or how does maths relate to another subject area, and having a look at how we can then have assessment tasks that go across curriculum areas, because we would be interested in the representation of the graphs and also, you know, the analysis, and how would you then teach that analysis to the kids. So I wonder how we can work together.
Yep. So let me just illustrate. So everywhere where there's a mathematical application in this first semester unit, this large unit I've done, I've used. All right. So I've endeavoured using biological graphs, biological represents chemistry, physics, whatever it is, astronomy data. All right. Explain how the table's constructed. All right. It's not just about the science. They can't appreciate and come to love the science content if they don't know how to read the table or how to read the graph. So sometimes we physically have to say this means this and that means that and rah, 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 right? And use this particular graph because this is ordinate data or this is discrete data or continuous data, whatever it is. Yeah. And we also do the literacy on top of that as well.
But we're a bit hamstrung, aren't we?
This is Robin. Robin is our colleague in Canberra who we've been working with as well.
And we're hamstrung, aren't we, by having generic unit outlines that say these are the assessment tasks? Yeah, because from a maths perspective, a lot of them come into the primary program and think, well, maths is that theoretical domain, and they don't see application, whereas science is the application of all that mathematics.
I think we try and use the science context, so we're actually using the context of, we're actually using the science context of biology, physics, chemistry, as Will said, and we're sort of using the mathematical tools of the analysis to investigate further the science context stuff. Does that sort of make sense?
Because we could almost parallel some of the
Exactly. Exactly. Yeah. So.
But so's the literacy. Very early on, I explained to the students prefixes and suffixes of science. Micro, macro, phage, ISIS for a disease. Look, they were totally engaged in the prefixes and suffixes and all the other conventions about naming things. Once they could name it, and then I gave them like photosynthesis, break that down for me, like their eyes started to sparkle, right? And I'm going, yep, this is the way you can actually look at a science word and not go, yuck, all right, or I don't know. But if you know the tools, you can make a big headway. So we're about making science exciting, all right? We want to change, or we can't change the world, we know that. But we want, Trish and I and my team at Strathfield and North Sydney, and now we've got Robin on board in Canberra, we want to make science for pre-service primary teachers, secondary teachers, that's kind of like preaching to the converted. But for these early childhood preschool primary teachers, we want to make science live. All right, we want them to go out and I'd love it if somebody wrote some principal from some school wherever and said, we have got some ACU graduates and their teaching of science is just fabulous at primary school. Gee, I hope I get one of those emails before I retire. But it would be lovely. I mean, I'm not, hanging out for it because I know that I'll just bore you with one of these slides. Oh, well, wait a minute. Just make an exception. We've all got exceptions to the rule. Here we go. I had a student who came in and said, I don't like science. She rings me up when she's finished and she says, Will, can you come and talk to my kindergarten class about light and sound because they're using some of the stuff and I've developed it, Will, from what I've done in the tutorial. So I figure that's at least a step. All right, that's it for us. Thanks.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
That's lovely. Thanks.